members of council, members of the executive management, members of Senate, our inaugural this afternoon, Professor Oliver Mtapuri, family, friends of Professor Mtapuri, academics and professional staff, students, alumni and colleagues from higher education institutions locally and internationally, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vivian Ojon, Dean and Head of School of Social Sciences, College of Humanities. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Nana Poku, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the inaugural lecture of Professor Oliver Mtapuri. The Vice Chancellor conveys his congratulations and best wishes to Professor Oliver Mtapuri. The Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Nglanga Mkize, conveys his apologies and congratulates Professor Oliver Mtapuri on his promotion and thanks him especially for his contributions to the College of Humanities, the university, and postgraduate studies. Inaugural lectures form part of the university's public lecture series and may only be presented by newly appointed full professors who have been appointed in academic schools and centers. Inaugural lectures present an opportunity for showcasing the exciting and groundbreaking research and teaching being carried out by professors in our university. Each lecture represents a significant milestone in an academic's career, providing official recognition of their promotion or appointment to full professorship. These lectures are furthermore an ideal opportunity for new professors to introduce themselves and to present an overview of their own contribution to their field to academic peers, students, and research collaborators. Inaugural lectures are also a platform for celebrating a professor's academic achievement with his or her family, friends, mentors, and colleagues. A special welcome to our guests from universities and organizations in South Africa, from the African continent, and across the globe. Distinguished guests, it is my pleasure to introduce our Dean and Head of School of Built Environment and Development Studies, Professor Ernest Nene Kalema, who will now formally introduce the inaugural, Professor Oliver Mtapuri.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I am honored and equally privileged to speak before you about Professor Mtapuri's lifetime of work. Professor Mtapuri is a full professor in the discipline of development studies at UKZN since April 1st, 2022. He is a C2 NRF-rated scientist and former interim Sachi Chair in Applied Poverty Reduction Assessment. He was a recipient of the award for top 30 most published researcher in the Staff Excellence Award in 2018 and 2019 held at the College of Humanities for outstanding performance and continuous commitment to excellence. The Vice Chancellor's Award, Teaching and Learning Excellent at Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership, University of Limpopo for 2013, and the Vice Chancellor's Award for the Best Established Researcher at Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership, University of Limpopo for 2012. Between 2015 and 2022, he has held a number of academic positions, including Associate Professor in the discipline of Development Studies and Academic Leader of Research and Higher Degrees, just to name a few. He obtained his PhD in Developmental Studies in 2018 at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and in 2003, a Master of Business Administration at the University of Zimbabwe. Before joining UKZN, Professor Mtapuri had a distinguished career in the public sector, both in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. In 1997, he qualified as a public accountant with the Public Accountants and Auditors Board, and prior to that, between 1992 and 1996, he qualified as an associate of the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators in Zimbabwe. This led him to serve the Zimbabwe Ministry of Labor as a Deputy Chief Research Officer for several years. He further pursued an academic career in South Africa and served as a part-time lecturer in several TVET colleges in South Africa before joining the University of Limpopo, where he was initially appointed as a senior lecturer in 2009 and was subsequently promoted to the rank of associate professor in 2012. At the University of Limpopo, he served in several committees and was appointed HOD in the new Masters of Development Studies program from 2010 to 2012. The University of Limpopo honored Professor Mtapuri by promoting him to the rank of full professor in 2015. Professor Mtapuri's research areas are poverty and inequality, redistribution and community-based tourism, public employment programs, research methodologies, and scholarship of teaching. He successfully completed the supervision of 14 doctoral students and 92 master students, mentored 3 postdoctoral fellows. He currently is supervising 5 doctoral students and mentoring 2 postdoc students. Professor Mtapuri has examined more than 64 master's students' theses and 41 PhD dissertations from various universities in South Africa and on the continent, including the University of Pretoria, the University of Johannesburg, the University of Cape Town, the University of Western Cape, Midland State University in Zimbabwe, just to name a few. It would be a shortcoming if I did not emphasize and mention the intellectual prowess of Professor Mtapuri's work, considering that he has been a research academic leader and an academic of note at the same time. To lead several portfolios in a transitioning academic institution such as UKZN, and still manage to produce the volume and caliber of work as a thought leader cannot be understated. He has published over 90 research articles in accredited journals, 10 book chapters and 8 books, and has contributed to research and policy briefs and reviews for reputable journals in his areas of focus. He is a reviewer of more than 10 academic journals. Those include top journals in development studies, Journal of International Development, and World Development. He has had an opportunity of giving invited lectures abroad, the Bergen University in Norway and Brown University in the United States. Professor Mtapuri understands that universities are a nexus of people, processes, and resources that should be managed delicately to realize excellence. I have been fortunate to work closely with Professor Mtapuri as Dean and Head of School. Not only does he effortlessly attend with precision and detail to administrative elements of the work, he inculcates a distinct and efficient work ethic and team culture that can be relied on throughout the rank and file of the university. Having been a witness to Professor Mtapuri's extraordinary tenure as a research leader, I would say he has made his mark in contributing to the transformation of our great institution, let alone our beloved continent. Professor Mtapuri is a great scholar that has made groundbreaking contributions as an interdisciplinary thought leader of development dynamics, theory, and practice. As we will learn today in his inaugural lecture, his star will continue to shine with more accolades of recognition of his contribution to the world of academia and beyond. I want to congratulate Professor Mtapuri for the academic feat of delivering his inaugural lecture today, and by so doing, discharging his academic obligation to the university, as well as ventilating to the world at large his major and invaluable contributions to the importance of theories of development from a global South perspective that aims not only to address complex African challenges, but also to ensure that young academics have an opportunity to challenge colonial discourses that are circulating in our world. On behalf of the School of the Built Environment and Development Studies, within the College of Humanities, which has been a home for Professor Mtapuri for a number of years. I congratulate you, Chingalwazi Oliver Mtapuri, on this inaugural lecture and invite you, Wena Prof, as we affectionately call you, to share your message entitled Unleashing the Power of Theories, Illuminating Pathways in Academic Exploration. I thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to firstly thank obviously council members, the executive management, and thank the senators, and also thank, obviously, family is very important in all this. I know my extended family, and they are all, I know, present in this lecture, which I'm presenting now. So I would like to thank, obviously, my two daughters. I know they are watching, they Shamiso and Rutendo are watching. So yes, I would like also to thank my students who have come through me, and also especially to thank Professor Julian May, who was my supervisor. He's the one who introduced me to poverty, and it's in its all, multi dimensions, and he grounded me in those theories and all that. So I'm so grateful to him. I'm grateful to many people, and I'm also very grateful to most of my students, those PhD students, the master's students, all of them who made this possible, because I do feel, and most of them, I must say, 95% of them were South African students, and some of them call me whenever they have their own promotions and so on. I'm so happy when they tell me, now I'm in Waterberg, this and that, I've been promoted, I'm Zanin, now I'm in provincial legislature and so on. So here in KwaZulu-Natal, some are in Joburg. So I hear those good stories, and I'm so happy for them. So I trained myself first, I did economics first. That's my first degree is economics. And I did another degree, well, it's equivalent to NQF level 9 in our terms, that Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators in Zimbabwe. So I did that one and completed that one, and also did the MBA. And all of these qualifications, they were, paid for essentially by the government of Zimbabwe, for which I'm very grateful. I got scholarships, to study, paid for by the government of Zimbabwe. So that's my training. So, and having worked in government, I got that experience in terms of we were working in social protection. I was in the Department of Labor and Social Welfare. So that's where my work started. That's why also my work here at the university revolves around public works programs and so on. And with all the collaborations also with my other colleagues, especially those in India and Argentina, we do work on public works programs. So that's where we focus on. So that work started in Zimbabwe anyway, where we were looking at, and I still see some programs that we initiated at the time are still running. I know the basic education and assistance module is still working in Zimbabwe even up to this day. People may wonder why it's a module, because at that time when we started our economic structural adjustment program, it started as a module because there were other modules that we were doing. We knew that with opening up of the economy, with the liberalization of the economy, jobs were going to be lost. So that we were in anticipation of that. And obviously, we were warned anyway by the unions at the time to say that this program is not good for the country. But at the time, it was seen as maybe at that time is necessary. So the basic education and assistance module, we initiated that plus other modules in terms of looking at, for instance, the other modules were looking at workers who are going to be exchanged, what were we going to do with them? So there were skills programs and so on and so forth. So that's what we had. That's why it's called a basic education and assistance module. But during that time, what we realized was that that's why you see it's community-based in terms of selection, how you select. But what we saw at that time is that the headman at any village was able to tell exactly each household, what was happening in each household. Whatever this, they go there, there's an old man there who's staying alone or with orphaned children. You could tell each and every household. And we collated all that information, and we had very good information by village, which we thought and felt that this was much better even than what information you can get in a census. So that was that work, and I am so happy that that program is still running up to this day. So that was the work in the ministry, and I rose through the ranks anyway, from a researcher to the deputy chief responsible for research and statistics. So that's where I then came here to South Africa. And when I came here, I started my PhD, but and also at that time, just before that, we had come here for training anyway, because we were going to do our own programs in Zimbabwe. So that's why we had come to the University of KwaZulu-Natal under a UNDP project, to train, in research methods and all those things, and our quantitative and quantitative data collection and all that, because we're going to implement our own programs at home. So that's why I knew about the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and we knew that it's a very good university, and we felt, that's the best place to be. So after that, I then also did work at the TVET College at BB campus in Umlazi. I worked there for almost 4 or 5 years at Umlazi, and that gave me some very good experience in terms of working with with these students, and they were very much eager to learn. And at one point, I did a competition for them. I said, anyone who passes my subject, at the time I was teaching them cost accounting, I said, anyone who passes my subject was going to get a free trip to Zimbabwe, and which we did. And one student did it, and my students were doing very well at that time. So I was happy for them there at that time. So we fulfilled that promise, and it did happen. So after doing that, after my PhD, I joined the community development. It was a department then. I worked there for a while and then moved over to the University of Limpopo. I worked at the University of Limpopo, rising also through the ranks from a senior lecturer to a full professor as well. I was a full professor at the University of Limpopo. And also there we had some collaborations that we were running. I had a collaboration with our colleagues in India, and also a collaboration with our colleague in Argentina. So with that one, our students went to Argentina, and also some Argentinian students and also their lecturers came to the University of Limpopo at that time. And also I moved with that program to the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And also we asked they brought over to us their student, and also I went to Argentina and also traveled to India. So we still have those links which are very strong with our collaborators there, but also have some collaborations here locally. We work with colleagues at the University of Limpopo, at the University of Zululand. We're working with colleagues at the University of UCT. We got colleagues also who work with at the University of Johannesburg, and also at WITS. And also we work with quite a number of other universities. We're working with Midland State University in Zimbabwe. We collaborate a lot. Great Zimbabwe University, we've got colleagues there. We're working with colleagues in Namibia. We've got colleagues in Uganda. We've got colleagues also in Ethiopia. We're working with them on various collaborations. Also, we have with other international universities. We're working very closely with our colleagues in Norway at the University of Bergen, also working very closely with our colleagues at the University of Brown University in America, and we still keep those very good links. So that's the work that we have been doing. And also, I also chair an NPO, which is Bridging the Gap South Africa. With Bridging the Gap, we've been doing some work around the whole province of KwaZulu-Natal. We do work since 2013. That's when we started. We're looking at work to do with prevention of HIV and so on. And also when COVID came, we were also working in that area. So we've done quite a lot of work in terms of providing psychosocial support and mental health. That's what Bridging the Gap is doing across the province. We've done work in the eThekwini Metro. We've done work in Amajuba. We've done work in Utukela, Umzinyati. We've done work in Zululand. Done a lot of work also in Ngungundlovu, Ilembe, in all the districts. We have in King Seshwayo, Herigwala, all those district municipalities. We have some footprint in all those districts. Essentially, even after COVID, or rather during COVID, we reached up to quite a huge sizable number, over 300,000, even between 300 to 500,000 in terms of issues of screening and tracing and so on. So that's the work we are doing. And also we were planning to extend some of our work. In fact, we did some work in the Eastern Cape also, where we were doing some capacity building for social workers under the banner of Bridging the Gap. So, and also we're planning to do some more work in terms of social policy, looking at with some colleagues in Lime Hill who are looking at social justice matters, and also they've got arts to it, and we like the arts also because the arts are very helpful, and we need those, especially in the humanities and social sciences, are needed more now than ever before. We need the philosophers now more than ever. We need the ethicists more than ever. So because of the patterns and trends where the world is going. So that's the work that we have been doing in terms of community engagement. But also, when I spoke about or thought about this topic, is because I feel that we have, or rather it's one of my lamentations anyway, that we need like centers of theory development. We need that, something that young people can take over in the sense of the idea, because we need those theories, and we are not using those theories. Because when I see, or most of our students, in terms even of our own training, I've seen that we typically would, talk about the Adam Smith in all our writing. We are talking about, Thomas Hobbes. We are talking about John Locke. We are talking about Karl Marx. We are talking about John Rawls and his, social justice theory, and so on and so forth. Voltaire, Rousseau, those are the people we're talking about. But hardly do we normally talk about our Ubuntu, our those, we need those, African theories, Sankofa, for instance, methodology. We need to talk about IFA or IFA, we need to talk about those. And that's where I'm heading, to say that we need to tap into our own theories as well. They're very important for us, in the sense that that will be a way of archiving our own knowledge, and also celebrating our, that African genius in that sense. So we need those theories in principle. And I see most of our students, they don't cite those. I know we've got our own theories, and there are many of them. We have got Leopold Senghor of Senegal, who was the president of Senegal, great theorist. We had people like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Amilcar Cabral. If you look at the idea, they are thinking around Ujamaa. And also we had people like Frantz Fanon. These are the people, Sophie Olwole, a Nigerian, theorist. So we need those. But I've seen some increase in terms of theories also coming from Nigeria, like they, talk about motherism, the feminists. They've got feminists who have come very prominently. Negro-feminism, for instance. Those are some theories that they are advancing. So we need more of those theories, but also within their camps, there are also those divisions, because there are some who support patriarchy and others who don't support patriarchy among them. So we see that, but we see a lot of work coming, emerging from Nigeria, from the Nigerian feminists. But the question that people have been asking, though, is that, can males be feminists as well? So that's the question which I leave to you to ponder. So that's the work we are doing. So why we like theory? So a theory, typically one would, think of even the simpler ones, where I would just mention, because a theory is just some logical, some coherent general statement, or rather an explanation of a phenomenon. When we look at a phenomenon, we can look at it as either a situation, a circumstance, a fact, and so on. That's how we would look at a phenomenon. So a theory, therefore, is that logical, coherent, and general explanation of a phenomenon. So that's how we would understand it. And that's how we like, and we've got African theories. We want those theories grounded in our indigenous knowledge systems. That's what we want. We want to deploy our own theories in terms of doing our analysis. Theories are important for many reasons. We need them because we need explanations. That's why we want to use theories. There are many things, complex problems that we face, but we need explanations for those problems, many social problems, economic problems. Therefore, we need theories to explain those problems. So it brings about, it brings meaning. So theories are very useful in sense of they help us to understand the past, and also they help us to bring meaning to the present, and also they help us to be able to predict. So theories are very important in terms of that, providing that guidance. They guide, say, even our research, they guide and provide those the necessary predictive power that we need. So you can use theories to predict. So that's where theories are very important. They are also, once we have those theories, you're able also to innovate. They are a springboard for innovation, innovations in terms of knowledge production. So that's why we want theories. So theories also can be revised and be rejected because of the dynamism, or rather, I would just say that theories are dynamic. In that sense, we need those theories to be falsified if it can be falsified. A theory can be rejected and a theory can be revised on the basis of new evidence. So a theory, good theories in principle are usually, are often grounded in empirical evidence. You know, a good theory must mimic or must be consistent with events. That's what we want. So, for instance, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, basic needs theory, it has stood this test of time because he spoke about the things like, obviously everyone needs shelter, you know, you need clothing and things like those. So it has stood the test of time because you need those things. No one who would come forward and say, I don't need such basic needs. So that's where we see it's a simple theory, accessible and easy to understand. So there are those qualities of good theory. So a good theory should be empirically grounded and also should be simple. And we say that a good theory should be parsimonious. By that we mean that it may have some complex concepts, but they are explained in such a way that they are simplified. It's easy to understand. You don't want a theory that is contradictory within itself. So a theory tells us about the relationship between the various variables. It does also can explain or give us some idea of the cause and effect. So that's what we want to be able to understand, to say, given the influence of given factor, these are the typical effects that you get. So that's what we want with a theory. So a theory must also be testable and also must be falsifiable. A theory also, we look at it, and also it must have some predictive power or explanatory power. We need that. That's when we look at the robustness of a theory. So also we look at it also because we look at it that it must have some simplicity. It must be simple. It must be accessible for people to be able to communicate it and also to explain it. So that's the work that we're talking about when we need them seriously, because they help us to solve complex problems. They also allow for interdisciplinarity. We can work using one theory. You know, I see people in education, they may use Amartya Sen's capability. We use it in development studies to understand different phenomena. But that then, with that theory, for instance, that brings us together. But I'm for our own theories and in the advancements of our own epistemologies. We must be at a point where we're able to presuppose, make our own postulations, be able to make our own hypotheses and develop our own theories. That's what we want. And these theories now, if before knowledge was passed on through oral means or through, you know, by storytelling, but this is the opportune time now to archive our own knowledge and document it, put it in books, put it in articles, journal articles, and so on, and create that. I see there's a lot of creativity. And when we were doing the work with at Bridging the Gap, when we did some surveys with the homeless, we did some surveys for the homeless, and did disability in Mkanyakude. And also we did one on sex offenders in prisons, and rather in the correctional centers. I beg your pardon there. So I saw, we met some young girls at the homeless girls, but give her a mic, you could hear, how she could sing. There was another Brenda Fassi that you could see there. There was another Yvonne Shaka Shaka, another Miriam Makeba. So in that sense, that there is a lot of talent. The talent is there. So the talent is available. So we need to take that talent. Even I was looking the other day, looking at just Oliver Mtukudzi, a singer. He has about 67 albums. If you multiply that by 5, you get more than 300 songs. So that's the level of creativity we are talking about. So very creative, and the creativity is there, and we have it on our continent. So that's thinking there. So we need those series. So in terms of our own work, and if we look at why I talk a lot about them, our theories, obviously, yes, we've seen those that have been produced, like the Ubuntu. Yeah, I spoke about Sankofa, the methodologies, IFA, and others have gone further to talk about Ubuntu Gogi. That's Bangura. He writes about the pedagogy of where you put humanity upfront, where humanity is you valorize humanity when you are teaching, which he called Ubuntu Gogi. So like another pedagogy where you teach, but putting Ubuntu upfront. So there are these that we must think about. And also, as we do our work, we must ensure that our work has impact. It must have impact in communities. It must have impact in society, and it must have impact at the national level. So yes, our impact may be at the individual level, even let it be, but our work must have impact all the way, the research that we do, and so on. So when I look at our own work, we need that, and I see theories as the software that we need. That's the software that we need to go further. So in terms of our own work, I want to give just a few of the work that we have done so far, and where we looked at, theorize in some way. So we did some work with Professor Stembisonieni, where we were looking at housing, and also we were taking a leaf from others, because with knowledge, with the theories, the important point is to build knowledge. Obviously, knowledge builds upon what is available. So we keep on creating, and so on and so forth. So we spoke about, because we did also another study where we were looking at informal settlements and looking at people, how they live. So in there, we were looking and then describing what we were observing. For instance, we know there's some people who have written, like Messi and also Miraftab, on these invited in spaces and so on. But we thought we should talk more about the spaces that we're seeing at that time. And it's not close to what Miraftab was writing from a feminist position, where she was writing more about citizen participation. But here we were looking at spaces. We were saying spaces, what we were looking and seeing and observing in this informal settlement, that we're seeing spaces of comfort and discomfort. So these spaces of comfort, because it gave people some semblance of dignity. That's how they felt, Yeah, this is different from the invented spaces. It is quite different. So we were saying these are spaces of comfort and discomfort. And here we are talking at the people, the conditions that people were living. We saw that in those spaces, people, in terms of being spaces of discomfort, what we were seeing is that, yes, we saw the fragility of their own structures, which also showed that, like now what's happening in Durban, we have had these floods last year, and also this year, we had some experience of some people speaking about a tornado and so on. So that showed these were also spaces of discomfort in these informal settlements. So they had that those are spaces of comfort and discomfort. We also spoke of them as being spaces of restricted choices and constrained opportunities. They've got very little choices in those, they can't expand the structures to as much as they want, because these spaces are so much constrained. And also you cannot build permanent structures. So the structures can't be permanent. You can't put a real foundation with mortar and brick. So the structures have to be perhaps even say movable when asked to. And we saw that fragility in these structures. We see also when we look at fires, they can easily be burned by fire. So even given the structures that they use, the material that they use for constructing them. So that's what we saw. We saw them as spaces of those restricted choices. We also say that we see them as spaces where we talk about participatory exclusion. By that we meant that people do participate in terms of being on the housing waiting list, and they are also in various municipal databases and so on. But they have that sense of, thinking that they are part of that process of housing rollout. But we see that that feeling of participation, some have died on that waiting list. So they're also not involved in the steering committees in municipalities and government departments. So in that sense, what we were saying is that people are excluded. They feel they are participating. That's why we call it participatory exclusion. So these are the things that we were observing. And also we say that these are spaces of oppression and domination, because these people at the whims of either the municipality or the landlord or the landowner, they can be removed at any time. So we see that these people are not enjoying the same full freedoms as others. So we see these spaces as spaces of unfreedoms, as stated by Amartya Singh. So I also looked at in one of the other case that I wanted to discuss today and talk about. I also looked at elections in Africa. We have seen elections in Kenya and Nigeria, and also elections are going to take place in Zimbabwe and also in South Africa next year. So as I looked at elections, I postulated some 5 V's. The 5 V's, you also see them in computing. They talk about their own 5 V's anyway in terms of volume. But in this case, I was looking at election, and using this, I felt this could be a good tool to analyze elections. Volume, by volume, the first V is volume. By that I meant how many people are participating in the elections. How many are they? We need to know the age distribution, who is participating, who's not. You need to know the voters' registers, how large, how small, what's happening with the voters' register. So in terms of volume, we need to know the numbers. We hear the youth are becoming very reticent in terms of participating in these elections. So that's that one V that would, in terms of when you're doing your analysis using this tool or this model, then you would check whether who's the patterns and trends of what's happening, say, with the youth. So I also postulated, I spoke about velocity. The second V is velocity. By that, I meant that when I look at velocity, I want to talk more about the regularity of the elections. How often do they take place? In the computing field, they'll talk about the speed. But in here, I wanted to know about the regularity. Also, regularity is important because they must be regular. It's part of that democracy. If it's 5 years, they must be 5 years. When elections are deferred, you're deferring, that the right of people to exercise their vote. So deferment, for me, also can be checked with when did that happen and so on, using this tool. And I also looked at also regularity doesn't mean it's democracy, because it may be regular, but if they are contested, I also very skeptical about those contested elections. And I also looked at variety as the third V. By that I meant I need to know how many political parties are participating. Are they growing the numbers? Are they getting smaller? And so on and so forth. So that's something that I felt could be looked at from that in terms of variety. We need variety in terms of the voices must be, different, and, obviously for a common good, meaning, nation building. So I also looked at the fourth one is value. This one, I said, what value do people get from an election? Do they get full value for their money in terms of, they are voting, they cast their votes, as perceived by them? Do they get full value? Do they elect the right councillors? Do they elect the right members of parliament? So that's my question. That you get value for the end result of your exercise of, your right to vote. So that's one thing that I want. I also looked at the idea, the fifth V would be veracity, to say that this whole process and systems and processes are trustworthy, were they rigorous, in that sense. I want to check that. Was there any rigor? Because that then gives the whole process its integrity. So the rigor, then, I would want also to know the outcomes. Is there any veracity, any truth in the outcomes of this process of election? Because we have seen that we expect and anticipate that elections must be free and fair. But elections can also be free and not be fair. And they can also be fair and not free. But for our intention, or rather it should be, or our expectation is that elections must be both free and fair. So we have seen that in principle, what has been the problematic now is the process of counting. As someone mentioned in the 1900s anyway, to say that people may vote, but what's important is the counting. But the problem with that is that those who are counting, if they are not doing the right thing, then that means that it's a travesty of the whole democratic process, and also a travesty of justice, in the sense that they are the ones who are determining, who should rule, with this country. So that's the framework that I postulated there. And also with my colleague, Dr. Andrea Mtapuri, who is at the Durban University of Technology, we were also now looking in the field of tourism. There we also postulated, in terms of this neoliberal thinking, they always think in terms of capitalism, when people are going in tourism, that they go essentially for, going to Cape Town, coming to Durban here, people come for the sun, sea, and sand. But we said, no, let's extend that model to, we extended to 7 S's anyway, from 3 S's, the sun, sea, and sand. We said, no, people do also come for shopping. So we added shopping. We see it a lot where even Zimbabweans, they can come, they do their shopping in Johannesburg, they come, they do their shopping in Messina. They also, the other way around, it also happens. They go to shop wherever they go and shop, it's both ways. So that's the whole idea that, yes, shopping is part of it. We see people going to Dubai even just to do shopping. So we added shopping to make it full. Then we added also that besides shopping, you can do surfing as well. People do come for surfing, so we added that one. We added also skiing. So we have that. And then in total, we also thought that, obviously that gave us 6. And then we added another one. We say in all Africa, there is a lot of safaris. There are safaris, the Kruger, we've got the Trans-Frontier Parks. We have everything from Tanzania to Kenya, lots of animals into Uganda, all over. So we thought in Botswana, all over. So we have these, then we created those 7 S's model. So that's what we did in terms of in tourism. So we have written a lot, and we have seen that quite a number of models that we have done with Dr. Giampicoli. And we have seen even why we're saying we are gratified and happy about that, because we have seen people citing them. People asking us to say, I've seen your model. We had recently a lady from a university in the UK asking to use one of our models in her own work. And we said, go ahead and just, obviously acknowledge us, as creators of that. And also we had others, PhD students also asking for, one from Spain was asking to say, can I use your model? We said, go ahead. So we have done quite a bit of work. And I also saw one paper that was writing, I did a systematic literature review on tourism, especially focusing on community-based tourism. They could tell that before, many of these studies were coming from America and Europe, especially coming many from Spain and China. But they've also seen that there's an upsurge in articles coming from South Africa. So in community-based tourism, it was a systematic literature review. I also saw, because I was able to see that paper, because I was asked to review it, and I could see even our names are in that map as people who are producing a lot of work on community-based tourism. And also we saw South Africa on that map, where they're saying that the output of articles on community-based tourism are coming from here. And we also see the citations are also, picking up. So we are gratified by the work we are doing, that we are getting that affirmation internationally and in the work that we are doing. So that's the work that we have been doing with Dr. Giampicoli. And also, I did some more work with on inequality. with Dr. Okem, we wrote in a paper where we talked about and went into informal settlements, asking them about inequality. In there, we saw that people were saying that inequality can be internalized. It can be very much oppressive and exclusionary, and that people felt that it did injure their self-esteem. That's what inequality would do. It disrupted their own self-esteem, their self-worth. That's how people felt. So, so in a way, what we saw from what we're reading from the work that we're doing, that people feel that inequality has some element of unfairness. They feel, when we look at South Africa being, that country with the, with the Gini coefficient that is the, most unequal country in the world. So we see that. So inequality is, they also say that it's very experiential. You have to feel it. You have to know it. You have to, see these inequalities. They see it every day. So in many ways, even some of them were saying that inequality in the worst case scenario can lead to crime and violence coming from inequality. So that also opens our eyes to say, yes, in terms of thinking and policies. So inequality is not good for the country in that sense, that yes, they spoke about that yes, we go and take from those who have. That's the bad thing about inequality. We go and take from those that we have, and that's how things are. So the one I want to talk about, the other one is the one we looked at with Dr. Koimtsun. We looked at with Dr. Koi. We looked at looking at migrants in Claremont. We're looking at migrants in Claremont and how they were staying in there. And this will be my last one. And in that, what we looked at and what we were seeing is that we could see that there was some politics of belonging taking place there. And what we could see from the data is that migration creates what we called some three effects: the residence effect, and also we saw it creating what we called nostalgic effect, and also the other one, the integrative effect. With that, what we meant was that the migrants, they had some sense of belonging in the sense that, and also some sense of entitlement, because what had happened is that they were occupying shops that were once occupied by the parents of the children who perhaps have gone to other places to work and so on. So the children are now renting out those shops, these spaza shops, and they are now working. So they have been there for a long time also as well. And that's the whole idea there. So they were feeling some sense of entitlement, but we also had some nostalgic effects where locals also had that sense of family and also togetherness and also that sense of inclusivity. They felt, oh, there were some good old days where they were doing things all together, but as a community, a neat and tight community in Claremont. And it's a very multicultural, suburb in that sense. So there's that sense that they felt they used to do things together, the weddings together, the funerals together. So that's how Claremont was. So we also felt there were these what we called integrative effects, meaning that it was some acceptance of diversity in terms of practice and also in terms of values. They said, yes, we can come together, we can coexist. So that was the thinking there, in some form of reciprocity between the locals and the migrants. So let's work together. So there were those integrative things. But then our topic was, we were looking at those what we were calling the limits of tolerance. So we checked the tolerance. We saw three forms of tolerance. The first one was cohesive tolerance, where people were saying we are one. Let's live together. That was the first one where we characterized as cohesive tolerance. Then we had another one where we called restrained tolerance, meaning that it was very unemotional form of tolerance, very ambivalent, and maybe showing some level of unsureness. People were not so sure about what that would, also, but at the same time embracing some element of coexistence. Then we had another one which we called intolerant tolerance, meaning that the locals were just saying, if you do not belong, you better leave. So in that sense, what they were saying is that, yes, the migrants, they have come, but they are keep to themselves. They are aloof. They don't want to be part of the community. They stay in their spaza shop. They don't come to the funerals. They don't come to the weddings and so on. So they remain aloof. They want them to be part of that system. And that also showed us that, yes, there was some harmony on one side and also some bit of some disharmony on the other. And these are the things, creating some element of, discordant environment and also showing the fragility of the whole situation. So these are some of the things that we managed to unpack. And based on that, we also came to the conclusion that when interventions have to be thought about, when you think of policies or in terms of even practice, people have to understand the context. Context is very important in this situation. So you need to understand the context. In another study that we did with Beatrice Mobei, and also we worked with Prof. Mahesh Naidu. There we looked at we're looking at migrants, both in those who are coming from Zimbabwe and Congo. So what we see there, we were looking at marital conflict and how it is resolved. So there, one of the conclusions that we came to was that culture matters in marital conflict, because what was happening is that negotiations seemed not to be working, but what was working was more to do with mediation. The mediation that was conducted using or through the church or using church elders to do the mediation. So because the main reason was that where there is a strong feeling for patriarchy, where there is a strong presence of patriarchy, perhaps negotiations in these communities wasn't working in terms of the Congolese and the Zimbabwean migrants in Durban. So what the key characteristics that we saw there, that the mediation would work, and it also had to work where it was voluntary, where parties were happy to give and take, and also it was a mutual process, and it was also in a context of being uncompetitive. It was also in a process, or rather in a context of being reciprocal and cohesive. So it can only work where people work towards that goal in terms of resolving the matter. So as I conclude my talk at the moment, I want to thank everyone who has been behind my work and who has worked with me, all our collaborators, and I hope somewhere in the context of my the need for great African thinkers, we want to see them. They are among us. We want those centers to be created wherever it can be. I've seen a lot of work that's happening from our colleagues in Namibia, in Zimbabwe, in Nigeria. They're doing quite interesting and good work. We want to keep on doing that good work. In Botswana, our colleagues are doing very good work as well. So let's keep together and work and produce those theories and produce those. It's important for posterity. It's also important for us to guard and also to be the agents, or also to have our agency over our own productions, in terms of defining the type of knowledges that we want to put forward there for everyone. These knowledges, or rather these theories, are not just for our own consumption, but they are for everyone. They are for the world. We want to showcase what we can do, to showcase the theories that are grounded in our own experiences. That's why I mentioned that context is very important. I almost wanted to say, as I close, I almost wanted to say amandla to theories, but I realized that this is not a political, rally. So I'd rather end at this point. I thank you so much. I thank you.
I want to begin by thanking Professor Oliver Mtapuri for delivering this lecture in a very passionate manner. The University of KwaZulu-Natal is proud to have you as a distinguished member. We are grateful for the wisdom you have shared with us today, touching on the very important issue of pushing the African agenda of pursuing indigenous truth and epistemes. Your lecture clearly has brought to the fore theorization from the Global South, which centers on indigenous thought processes, conceptualization, creativity, and reasoning. We are thankful to your family for their support through this very challenging journey. Today's lecture has been attended by some of Professor Mtapuri's colleagues and students, as you heard him say, who have worked with him and contributed to the success of his career nationally and internationally, and who are in attendance today. I don't want to name them. He did mention some of them by names. In case I leave some out, we thank you for attending. I would like to thank the School of Built Environment and its leadership under Professor Ernest Kalema for providing a nurturing and enabling environment for the career of Professor Mtapuri to thrive. We thank the school for providing an intellectual home for Professor Oliver Mtapuri. To corporate relations team led by Ms. Norma Zondo, Ms. Pamela Adams, to the registrar, Dr. Kathy Cleland, together with her team, and many others who have played an important role behind the scenes to ensure the success of yet another flawless inaugural lecture. We thank you immensely. Members of the community who have been here with us today, we thank you for your support. And with these words, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all and God bless you. Thank you.